Hello, company, and welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry and those dedicated to their craft, covering the latest news and issues, what to see and do, showcasing theatrical talent, and always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. My name is Andrew Keates. I'm a director and your host. Today's guest is an internationally recognised musical theatre performer and actor, with credits that span stage and screen. He's filled many a high heel, playing Frank in The Rocky Horror Show, Hedwig in Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and even a cloven hoof playing Satan in Jerry Springer the Opera, for which he won an Olivier Award, and another for Kevin in The Heights. Simply put, he's one of my favourite men in the business. Please welcome the one, the only, Mr. David Bedella! Welcome to the show!
Wow, that's impressive.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will be discussing on the soapbox today celebrity casting, and it does grind Mr. Bedella's gears. We'll have the latest dramatic news. On the platform, we have music from Emma Jane Morton and Edwin Ray's Prophecy, a new Tudor musical, and I'll be interviewing David Bedella all about his life, career, and setting him some infamous Show People podcast challenges too. You're listening to the Show People podcast. Welcome to the show.
Wow, I really have to say, and this is genuine, it is impressive to watch you work your knobs. I mean, there's a lot here that you have to balance and juggle, and you do it all. It's amazing.
I mean, David, I think between you and I, we have enough experience juggling knobs, getting them exactly where we need them to be.
It's possible.
I'm so glad to have you on this, because listeners to the show will have heard your velvety tones when I've been playing you in our transitions, and nearly every single person has said either, it's Bedella, the man with the golden voice. Everybody always responds. And it's a nice quality to say, because you don't get to say this about everyone. But whenever I talk about you to any artist whatsoever, they always light up when they hear your name. And I think it's obviously because you're very talented, but you just radiate this kindness, this life, this sort of life force, which I don't know if it's an American thing, but I've never heard anyone say a bad word, and that's pretty hard. That's
awfully nice to hear, and it wasn't always that way.
When you were a dancer.
I think I was a bit of a douche, if I'm honest. Yeah, it's been a long road crafting myself to become the person I want to be.
Yeah.
Do you know? And of course, we're never done with that challenge. But I can remember who I was in the early years, and I look back with some shame and some embarrassment at some of the things I've done, some of the things I've said, the ways I've behaved. I feel more pleased with who I am these days.
Well, that's amazing. I find it amazing because, again, and it's so sincere. Every time I play that little jingle of you, introducing the Show People podcast, which I think I asked you at 2:00 in the morning or something, please record this for me because I've got nothing.
Yeah.
And everyone always lights up. So I'm delighted to finally have you on
Very
here.
nice. Thank you.
Now, I know we can't talk about what you're doing, but you're doing something really exciting, which we can't discuss and you're in rehearsal for at the moment.
Right.
So we'll leave that conversation to die, but we'll wait for the announcement. So David's working on something brilliant, exciting. I know nothing about it.
Yes.
And you guys will find out.
Well, here, I'll say this. It's a new musical that reminded me very much of the early days, the Jerry Springer days, because what I think worked so brilliantly about that piece was that you took high art, which was classical music and operatic music, and you mixed it with very low art, which was, if we can even call it art, which was the Jerry Springer show. So you have these two things coming from opposite directions, colliding and creating magic. This new piece does the same. Does absolutely the same. The pop world with a world that we have known for several centuries of theatrical art colliding and becoming great and magnificent.
And hopefully do let the producers know. Please send us a press release when we can talk about it, because we'll include it in dramatic news, and hopefully we can cover it and announce it as soon as you're given the all clear. But,
there we are.
But yes, or keep listening to this space, please, listeners, and you'll find out what Mr. Bedella is up to. Now, you've been a busy boy, because when I last asked you to do this, I think you were in the States. I think you were seeing family.
Yes.
How often do you get to visit home, and how often do you go from the UK to America?
Well, it's interesting. For the last almost 20 years, my work has all been here. And so when I go home, it's for the occasional visit to the family, catch up with everybody, and then I come back here and do my work. In the last 2 years, that has shifted dramatically, and I've spent quite a few months in Los Angeles. and trying to find my way back to America.
Yeah.
And it's not been easy. It's not been an easy ride. This is a terrible thing to say. I hope to God there are no Americans listening, but I find myself, I've grown an aversion to Americans. I find them vulgar and crass. I don't like the way they represent my original country.
But don't you want to make America great again, David?
Oh my God, kill me. Just kill me. So yeah, it's really hard to go back. And then when you end up spending months in a place like Los Angeles, where every person you meet is self-centered, egocentric, looking into your eyes to see, can they get anything from you? And the second they realize they can't, you see the interest go. They absolutely can't be bothered with another moment of conversation. That's been very hard. London is full of quite real people, as was New York. My time in New York, you're met with authenticity almost everywhere you go. Too much, in fact. But LA is the opposite, and that was hard. Really hard to wrap my head around.
In fact, Alistair Brammer was on just a couple of episodes before. And he was saying he's just done the LA thing and he's trying to get over there and see what he can do. What Alistair was saying was how Americans will refuse to use British lingo. So if you're in rehearsal and you're waving an empty coffee cup and you say, "Where's the bin?"
Yeah.
People will still look at you and go, "Don't know. Don't know what that is." It's like, the bin for this rubbish.
Rubbish.
No idea. Do you mean the trash can? Oh, it's there. Like is it sort of I don't know, is it an ego thing? Is it just the refusal to use British terms?
Americans just think they've got it right. We fixed what you didn't have right in your language, and so please use the fixed version.
Like aluminum, which is my favorite American word.
Yeah.
Aluminum, which sounds lovely.
I take a lot of flack for that word.
Do you still use aluminum?
I do. I grew up with it. It's hard to shake certain things. But in the same vein, when I go back to the United States, they go mad when I ask for, can we have some tomatoes with that? And they go, what? Look at tomatoes.
And what's the, I can't remember who it was. I remember, because I've known you literally since I was 17.
Oh, good Lord.
17. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I remember, anecdotally, I think we were on a night out with Paul Baker at one point, I think many years ago.
Well, that says it all.
In fact, it might have been after you doing Hedwig, which is still the finest Hedwig I've seen. God, that's how I discovered the song "The Origin of Love," which is one of my top 5 songs ever written. And when I think of it, I only think of you singing it as a baritone. John Cameron Mitchell, genius, wonderful man, but you were my Hedwig. And what was it? I remember you saying, I think somebody had started to call you Dave.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a novelty for you back then. It was like, I quite like being known as Dave rather than David Bedella. But now listening to you, you're saying things like mate, for example. Like, do you find yourself holding on to British lingo when you're back in the States?
It's just very hard to shake it. I have been here nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
And even that right there, I said been here. I'm conscious of trying to sound American right now. Yeah. I would say been here. I would say been. I've been. It leans more towards English these days than it does over there. This is interesting. My last season here in Los Angeles, I went to, and this happens many, many auditions in a row. I went in and I did a scene for someone, and she said, "Can I just say to you, your American accent is really good when you're doing the scene?" And I started laughing. I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Well, obviously you're British, but your American accent when you're acting is really convincing."
Yeah.
And I had to just laugh and say, I have so little British accent. I am fully American. But I do think when I get nervous, I lean into where I'm comfortable. And I'm comfortable here.
David Bedella, it is time for a Show People podcast challenge.
Oh,
well, look, we'll do it really quickly. In 60 seconds.
Oh, God. Oh, I'm cringing.
Good. In 60 seconds, I would like you to sum up your entire CV as much as you can remember in 60 seconds.
No, wait.
Yeah.
You can't go yet. Are we including my US credits or are we doing from the time I came to London?
I would love you to include as many US credits because I know you haven't included US credits in your UK CV.
No, they're nowhere to be seen. If you open a program when you go see a show I'm in, there's nothing from the US in there.
Which is insane because there are shows that I absolutely adore that you have done.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I mean, without spoiling it, like, I don't know, a chorus line, which when I think you even told me about doing Paul's speech, even a slight tear came to your eyes, and it's not on this CV. Like, sort it out, man.
Right. Okay. Oh, God.
So, David Bedella, I have your CV in front of me. Your Show People Podcast Challenge starts now.
Right. I started out as a backup singer for Vic Damone in concert. Then I went to, Opryland USA was my first theme park. And then I did West Side Story in Chicago at the Candlelight Dinner Playhouse. I ended up doing 9 shows there. West Side, My One and Only, Chorus Line, Rags, fuck me. I don't know. I did a bunch of shows there, 9 of them. Oh, Dreamgirls. No. Yeah, Dreamgirls.
Were you in Dreamgirls?
Yeah.
Great.
I was Marty, the manager. And dance captain. Okay, yeah. Did I blow it?
No, you're still going.
Oh, God, okay. Came to New York, did Rocky Horror, did Smokey Joe's Cafe.
3 years for Tony Christopher.
Paint Your Wagon. Tony Christopher? Oh, Jesus Christ Superstar.
Very good. I've just done a crucifix impression.
I appreciate that.
Kennedy Center?
90 North. Kennedy Center. Help me.
Okay, just a tiny thing might have involved you with horns and a red jacket.
Jerry Springer the Opera.
You know that tiny thing you did for years?
Yeah.
I mean...
Please don't tell me that was 60 seconds.
So that was 60 seconds.
That really sucked.
So little things. I mean, I saw you do this and you were fucking brilliant.
Yes.
Roadshow. You were brilliant. You and John Robbins in that was absolutely sublime. You were the first company to make Roadshow make sense.
Wow.
I thought it was beautifully done.
Sondheim thought so as well. He cried in the wings.
I just loved it when you arrived in a box.
In my coffin.
It was like, oh, Bedella in a box.
Yeah.
I mean, you could market that as a souvenir. Get your Bedellas in a box. I mean, Jerry Springer, of course, we're going to talk about. Let's keep... I mean, again, which I saw you do, again, on exactly the same par as Harvey Arnold, Torch Song Trilogy.
Oh, yeah. Torch Song.
Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which I mentioned earlier. We've got It's a Wonderful Life, which I didn't even know there was a... So was that based on the film? Or does the film come from...
No. The film was written for a film.
That's what I thought. So that was a stage adaptation.
Yeah.
Paint Your Wagon.
Yeah.
What else have I got here that I can find? Betwixt in Concert. That Triumph.
God, I forgot about that. That's where I met Sheridan Smith.
Roger Debris. Now, that was the producers.
Yes.
Where was that? Was that a tour?
It was a tour. It was a UK tour. Yeah, I did it with Jason Manford and, a bunch of people.
No disrespect to Jason Manford, because I know he's brilliant and has a background in musical theatre. But surely you would be Max.
No, goodness
Why not?
No. Because I'm so theatrical. It's right to be. It's right to have me as Roger Debris. It was the perfect fit.
You forgot you did Sweeney Todd.
Oh, God, yeah.
That tiny little show that sort of the smallest show that had the biggest impact ever.
Loved it. Hardest thing I've ever done.
You won an Olivier for In the Heights?
Yeah, there's that. Yeah.
Putting it together?
Oh, loved it. That was magic. That was organic, grown from one phone call that led to lots of great stuff.
Well, there are plenty other credits here, which I won't go through, because we're going to talk to David about his whole life and career. We're going to start at the very beginning and work our way forward and find all the various anecdotes that he has picked up.
Yeah.
But we're going to take a little break and we're going to hear from this lovely man.
Hello, my dears. You have the ineffable and probably undeserved pleasure of listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates. This is Stephen Fry wishing you a wonderful listen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fry. It's time for the Soapbox, the part of the show where we discuss an industry issue. David, what grinds your gears? What would you like to talk about?
God, there are so many, but and I don't want to be one of those whingy, whiny, green-eyed monster actors who complains about everything that they didn't get, but but here I am. But I think the thing that really gripes me the most is celebrity casting.
Okay.
I have to say, when you see somebody in a role, in a prominent position, and they have no right to be there except for the fact that they are famous, therefore they'll put bums on seats. Mm-hmm. And they're wrong for it, but that's okay because they'll sell tickets. Really hard for me. Really hard.
I'm going to address the elephant in the room because I can say it rather than you. Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah.
Now, I say this because, firstly, you played Billy Flynn.
I did, twice.
You know, in Chicago, the proper version of Chicago. I have said, I'm on record for saying, Kander and Ebb, in my opinion, along with Sondheim, probably the finest musical theatre composers, writers that we've ever had, that, Rodgers and Hammerstein, and many of the others that are out there. But Kander and Ebb is not easy material. You know, it's not like, you know, yes, you see kids singing Mr. Cellophane, but to perform Mr. Cellophane, you've got to have a total understanding of what that's a pastiche of, the setting, the irony that's involved, the humanity of that show. I'm sorry, but a simple prerequisite has to be you can sing the notes. You know, and I understand there are some actors that aren't necessarily the greatest singers, Judi Dench, for example, but has a facility to serve the character.
Yes, absolutely.
Cuba Gooding Jr. doesn't appear to have either of those two things, and I have no problem with saying that and being held accountable for that. I just think it's an insult, really, to what we've dedicated our lives to doing, serving an art form, rather than being, you know, just a name to pull in people that couldn't care less about the show. Yeah. And also, do people go to see Cuba Gooding Jr. in his show?
That's a good question.
How many people
Has he put bums on seats?
Who goes, do you know who we need? Cuba Gooding Jr. Like, I know he's got his awards and I know his early career, but who goes, if you've not any desire to see Chicago, who goes, now Cuba Gooding Jr. is in it, definitely going to book my tickets. I'm like, I don't know.
Bro. No, I don't know. I don't understand it. But the higher your celebrity rating, the faster you are into one of these roles. And when you do a show specifically like Chicago, when I watch the skill of someone like Sarah Sothart, she was my Roxy twice. She is magnificent. She does things with that role that nobody else will. But she's not famous. So she's been very lucky that her skill level is so high they continue to ask her back. She's doing this current version. But it's always in contrast to, do we have a name in the Billy? Do we have a name in the Velma? So our work, those of us who have training and skill and years of experience, we're always at the other end of, do we have a celebrity to counterbalance? And that's saddening. That's disappointing. You'd like to know that you're doing it because you're strong and you're good and you're the right person.
You've just reminded me of one of my favorite anecdotes. So obviously when Chicago first opened over in America, Gwen Verdon was playing Roxy.
Yeah. And
there's a great story that when Gwen Verdon was going to leave, she didn't want it announced because she didn't want the box office to suffer. So apparently the old anecdote goes that there was a voiceover when, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's performance, the role of Roxy Hart will not be played by Miss Gwen Verdon. So immediately the audience, started, booing and things and walking out. People got up from their chairs, they headed for the doorway and then went, the role will be played by Miss Liza Minnelli. And people slowly crept back to their steps.
Maybe we'll stay.
Liza. Maybe. But the story, I just like the idea of some queen being at the button going, I'm just going to give a slight dramatic pause. But that just goes to show. Now, I'm not saying that there are millions of Liza Minnellis out there, but have you had to do shows with somebody that perhaps can't do the role that has been cast because of their status? And has that affected the company morale? Has that affected your performance?
I'll be honest with you. It's rare that I've had to deal with it on a personal level. Yeah. It's what I see happening in the West End. The closest I've come, and I say this with great love and affection, is working with Jo Brand. We did Aladdin together. Yeah. And she is not a musical theater star.
No.
She is not a panto star. There's very little about her that calls to be on the live stage. She is a television celebrity and a stand-up. But she was so wonderful in the show. She was endearing, and she was. I loved every day working with her. And every day I was reminded, this is not what she does. This is not, we'd be sitting next to each other and I'd say, Joe, we got to get up now because that's our entrance. And she'd say, well, okay.
Can't be asked.
Can't be asked, really. Do you want to do it? Oh, all right.
Would they miss me?
Yeah. So, it wasn't her thing, but we had a ball.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind working with someone who, once she was out there, she brought it. You know, the audiences loved her. She did what she was meant to do. So that's the opposite end. There can be good aspects to bringing celebrity in. And I know a lot of people came to see that because they wanted to see Joe Brand. I do know that.
I suppose the difference there is you're talking about a female comic that has grafted in front of audiences back before she was presenting. Sandy Toksvig is another great example of that. But when it comes to musical theatre, I mean, if she was cast as Desiree in Follies, I might have a bit of a problem with Joe Brand doing that role. Maybe that's brilliant. Maybe that's actually a superb idea. But you just go, but what do you fulfill other than, we have to bring ourselves to these characters.
And that's why it worked, because she was paid to be Joe Brand in Aladdin.
Yeah.
And that's what she brought to it. If she was doing one of the roles in Chicago and she had to inhabit that character and do nothing else, I don't think it would have worked.
Do you know what? There's another thing, I suppose, going back to your early days when I first met you. Of course, I wonder how many people would have seen you playing musical theatre roles and gone, that's Carlos of Holby City. Do you know what I mean? I wonder how many people, because,
on a nightly basis.
Yeah.
It worked for a while. We did them in tandem.
But again, I wonder how, when you were cast in Jerry, how many people might have thought, oh, they've cast him because he's off the telly, rather than the fact that your entire life had been theatre and then you had got that particular telly job.
Yeah, do you know what? I never even thought about that, but I doubt that happened very often.
And no, maybe. And I suppose the other difference we're talking about, going back to Cuba and other casting, I suppose when you sit down and hear you sing, you kind of go, oh, that's all right, I can cope with that.
Yeah.
I've heard reports from ushers at the Phoenix that they're turning the tannoy down.
Can he not sing it? I don't know. I've not seen him.
No.
You see, this is an uneducated opinion, whether he's good or bad in the show, because I haven't seen him do it. So I really shouldn't. Who knows? I could turn up and he could be great.
I think it's common knowledge now,
Yeah.
and it's reported by enough people that it's extraordinary if he can get through a scene remembering a line.
Oh, God.
And secondly, just cannot sing those notes. Well, listeners, what do you think? Have you seen Cuba Gooding Jr.? And do you think that it's a wonderful show? And actually, we're just being two old bitches. I'm more than happy to say if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Get in touch. You can email the show, info@arian-productions.com. You can tweet the show at ShowPeopleUK using hashtag ShowPeoplePodcast, or join the Show People Podcast Listeners Forum at facebook.com/Show People Podcast. Give the page a like and join in the conversation, as if we don't talk about these things, well, we just can't change them.
Hi, this is Annette Badland, and you're listening to the Show People Podcast with Andrew Keates.
David Bedella, let's start at the very beginning.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Fine. David Bedella hasn't seen The Sound of Music, people.
A very good place to start.
Very good.
God.
So, because I'm sure people have wondered, David
Yes.
Bedella, where were you born? Where did you grow up? What was a baby Bedella like?
I was born in Gary, Indiana, which is, for those of you who don't know, is about 45 minutes east of Chicago, Illinois. Across the Indiana border. It's most famous for having birthed the Jackson 5, which eventually birthed Michael Jackson. It was just this tiny little town. My dad was a steel worker. My mother was a housewife. They were very humble people. There were 4 children, and they, along with many of their friends, who all married within a 2-year period, moved to this little town, this little budding new town called Gary, Indiana, where they had bungalows and little picket white fences. I mean, honestly,
my God.
the American dream. And we all grew up in the same neighborhood, knowing each other, loving each other, sharing families. It was a great childhood.
Because I was it the first person? I think the first time I heard your name, I'm sure somebody said to me, David Bedella, oh, he's Mexican.
Yeah.
Do you get that quite a lot?
I don't hear. I don't
Why?
hear.
Was it because you had a moustache? I mean, I'm just trying to work
Who
out.
knows?
Why do people say that?
One of the first things I loved about coming to the United Kingdom was that I was no longer the Mexican. In my work back in the United States, it was first and foremost. It was the first thing people saw, and it was the biggest concern in my casting.
But why? I don't get it, because I just don't get it. Like, why specifically Mexican?
I don't know. I mean, over there, I'm quite identifiable as Mexican, and they're very familiar with the Mexican culture and where their place should be within the American society, which is busboy, gardener, et cetera, et cetera. Here, I'm not seen as Mexican. I'm seen as the American. And so it's a whole different shift.
Well, you say that. I mean, I would like to go further with that and say you're seen as, a competent, great male lead / character actor when required. The nationality thing never comes into my thinking when it comes to you. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you're a generous man.
No, but I think lots of people think that. I mean, but then what do I know? I'm still a Caucasian guy, so why would I understand those struggles? I admit that.
Yeah.
And what was childhood like?
It was completely non-showbiz.
Right.
I didn't know anything about showbiz other than there was this show on Saturday nights at 9:00 called The Carol Burnett Show.
Yes.
And we were allowed to stay up late. My bedtime was 9:00 always, but we were allowed on Saturdays to stay up late because Carol Burnett was on. And they were laughing and playing and doing comedy skits and dancing. The thing I was most attracted to was the Ernie Flatt Dancers.
Yep.
It's a group of, I don't know what they were, 12 dancers who would come on and they would be the break while all of the actors changed into their next costumes for the next skit. And I saw them and I thought, wow, that's what I want to do. I want to be a dancer. Wow. And I remember expressing it to my Aunt Judy. We call them tias in Latin culture. Yeah. My tia Judy, I said to her, she said, did you know what you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to be an Ernie Flatt dancer.
Oh.
And there was absolute silence on the other end. And then she said, well, that's okay, honey. And it was the first clue I had to the fact that it might not be okay.
Yeah.
To go into show business or to be a dancer. She thought, that's not great, but okay. So yeah, that was my first introduction really to showbiz.
And that was from the Gogglebox, isn't it? That was from television.
Absolutely.
And what's your first memory of being in an actual theatre? When was that realised?
When I was in school, I was asked to be, oh God, these are humiliating memories.
Go on.
I was asked to be in a play. It was the Nativity play. For Christmas. And I was given the role of Joseph.
Lovely choice.
I thought, oh my God, I have made it. I am going to be Joseph. I'm going to be right there next to Jesus, right next to the manger. It's going to be big.
Yeah.
And it's going to be big. And my mother and I, we put together this sheet that wrapped around me and hung in front, and we belted it, and it looked like a shepherd's robe.
Yeah.
And I went in just ready to play my part. They took a brown paper bag and they cut out 2 circles for the eyes.
Are you taking the piss?
And they colored in a beard and they put it over my head.
This is almost clan-like, David.
It's really scary, isn't it? But they wanted me to have a beard and to represent the Holy Family and not actually do anything.
Couldn't you have, a paper bag? That's
a paper bag over my head.
Fucking dark.
And I remember standing there underneath the paper bag and, tears in my eyes and thinking that it was the most humiliating thing I'd ever done.
Yeah.
The next year, I went back to do the Christmas pageant, and this time I was asked to be a shepherd. And, we had to do those lines, for unto you is, whatever that was. I can't remember the dialogue. And I was kneeling down as a shepherd, and I had to stand up and say, for we are sore afraid. I think that was my line. And as I stood up, I was, again, with the sheet wrapped around with the belt, I was standing on my robe. And as I stood up, it caused me to fall backwards.
Oh. And
that audience went crazy with laughter. And again, I was humiliated and thought, this is not for me. Showbiz is not for me.
Just goes to show, doesn't it? It's those early experiences at school that shape us.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you didn't do this? What would you have done if you had not gone into show business? What do you think you would have been doing?
I'm sure I'd be working in the steel mill because that's what everybody did. That's what everybody did in my hometown. You waited till you were 17 and you applied and you went into the steel mill and you earned a good living and you raised a family. That's what you did. Luckily for me, in the 6th grade, I was asked to be the MC of a talent show. And so I didn't have to do anything except read off the cards. I got out there and I'd have to say, the next act is so-and-so singing blah, blah, blah. And I got out there and I remember speaking to the audience for the first time. And I remember saying something funny. I can't even tell you what it was. And I got a laugh. Oh. And I started to ad-lib and I started to talk about what I knew about these kids. And you're going to love this act and this and that. By the end of the evening, I knew how to handle an audience. And that was the first real glimmer into knowing I could do this for a living. Mm-hmm. I then went we moved to a different town. We moved to Maryville, Indiana, and I got involved in the choir, in the band, understood what it was to be a performer. Started doing musical theater in the summers. They had a thing called Ross Summer Music Theater, where about literally 100 of us kids got together and did a show.
Amazing.
And I did Bye Bye Birdie and Carousel and Hello Dolly and Oklahoma. And at that point, I was 17 years old, and I knew that this was what I was going to do with my life.
Hello, this is Kim Ismay, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates, and I hope you're having a wickedly interesting time.
When did you get out of Indiana? How did you break away? Did you run out or were you tentative?
No, it's kind of strange. I had, when my senior year of high school, Vic Damone was traveling through Chicago and he was looking for backup singers to do his Christmas concert. And I ended up doing that. I was a backup singer for him. A local theater was doing a production of Scrooge, the Leslie Bricusse version, and I auditioned for that, and I got that. So there were indications that I could do this professionally. But again, I was 17 and a senior in high school.
Yeah.
When it came time for graduation, I've never said this publicly. This is hard. Mm-hmm. This is hard to say publicly. Mm-hmm. I did not graduate high school, and that's a big deal in the U.S. I fooled around in the auditorium. I was constantly doing shows and concerts and chasing my heart's desire. And I did not do the work I needed to do academically. And when it came time for graduation, they came to me and said, "You're not graduating."
Wow.
And I said, okay. They said, you can go through with the ceremony and you can wear the cap and gown, but when you're given the folder, it will be empty.
That's good of them, but at the same time, what a dichotomy to face.
It was hard. I felt humiliated and I felt very ashamed of myself for having squandered away my senior year. But my heart was in the theater. It's all I wanted to do. And so I went up and I went through the whole ceremony, and I knew that I had to go back in the summer and complete several courses, redo several courses. And what ended up happening was a friend got in touch with me and said, there's this audition in Chicago on Saturday, and it's for Opryland USA. Do you want to go? And I said, I don't even know what that is, but yeah, let's do it. And I remember I had to go get a headshot made because I never even had a headshot.
Right.
And I learned a song, All I Need Is the Girl from Gypsy.
Yeah.
And I went in and I auditioned, and he didn't get called back, but I did. So he had to sit all day while I went through the dance calls and all of that stuff. He was livid, obviously. He was very upset with me. But I got the job, and I got my first. This is where I consider my real training. I got the job at Opryland USA. We were doing, 2 shows a day, 3 shows a day, 5 days a week, out in the sun, dancing our behinds off. And you learned how to sustain your voice for that many shows a week. You learned how to dance hard. You learned how to work an audience and connect. That was really my training. That's when I learned everything.
Did you secure an agent? How long did that take?
Well, listen, we were surrounded by the same thing over there. Everybody that I did theme park with was on break from university. They were all doing their 4 years of learning how to do musical theater and their theater training. I didn't. I didn't even know half the stuff they were talking about. So for me, that was my training ground. And I eventually, when I finished that summer, I luckily got hired to do Oklahoma on national tour.
Wow.
And I got that. And again, you're learning as you go. Not done this before, but okay, I'll listen. I'll keep my eyes open and let's see how it goes. From there, I got a call to go to Chicago. where they were doing West Side Story. I was 18 years old, and they wanted to know if I'd audition for Chino.
Yeah.
And I got it, and that started 10 years of theater in Chicago. Yeah. That was the really big door opening for me.
So in many ways, you had a sort of 10-year vocational training on, let's be honest. So, I mean, you know, Chino in West Side Story is a really big deal. At 18?
Yeah.
There aren't many 18-year-olds I know that I go, he's perfect for Chino and West Side Story. Think of all that experience he's got. And again, that would have been all of the, you know, all of the original choreography, I take it?
Yes.
That you would have had.
The show's not allowed to be done in the United States without Jerome Robbins' choreography.
Yeah.
You cannot get the rights to the show without...
Were you terrified, or was it just a youthful energy that said, fuck it, I can do this?
Do you know, you don't know, when you're 17, 18 years old, you don't know what you can't do.
Yeah.
And so you go ahead and say yes to everything. Yeah, but it was great training, really great. And I got to work with some of Chicago's finest talent. And it started a long, 10 years of just learning as you go, more and more and more and more. I have to pee.
Hi, I'm Alex from Theatre Counts. We are specialist accountants for the entertainment industry. Some people say the best accountants for the entertainment industry. And here is our tax tip of the week. It's early June and summer is hopefully on its way amongst all of the storms. And the next storm in line is the July payment on account. This is a requirement created by HMRC that still baffles so many people. You may or may not have one to pay. Our advice is to complete your 17-18 tax return as early as possible and definitely before the 31st of July, as you could reduce your payment on account if you've earned less for the 17-18 tax year. You might be able to reduce it to zero, or you may even be due a refund. If you need any help, please get in touch. If you're considering an accountant for the first time, or you are thinking of moving accountants, it really couldn't be easier to join us. Feel free to get in touch for a free chat. You can contact us via our website, www.theatrecounts.co.uk, and you can find us on Twitter, @theatrecounts. If you are a new client to us, we will also give you a discount off your first year's fee. Just quote the Show People podcast.
So the Chicago 10 years,
Yes.
what happened at the end of that 10-year period?
I had been put into a box and I had to break out.
And and you said this to me off mic, but when you first arrived. Was this your concerns of being perceived as a dancer?
Yes.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to, I'm trying to think of the theater. It was Drury Lane Oakbrook in Chicago, and they were doing Jesus Christ Superstar. Now, this is a show that has a role written for a bass. I am one of the few authentic basses. I have a low A flat below low C that is just accessible to me on a daily basis.
Was this Caiaphas we're talking about?
Caiaphas. And I know that there aren't a lot of people that can sing that. Mm-hmm. And so I went to the audition and I went in to sing, and they said, "Oh, hi, the dance call is on Thursday." And I said, "Yes, I'm here to audition for Caiaphas." "Okay, but we'd really like to see you on Thursday." And I said, "I understand that, but I'd really like you to hear me do this." Okay. Mm. I sang for them, and they ended up giving the role to a very great actor in Chicago. His name is John Rieger, and I have all respect for him. He is also a low voice, but I stood outside the door and I listened to him sing it. And I knew that he couldn't sing it like I could, but he was a great actor. So I can't actually challenge their choice. It probably was the right choice. He had, probably 15, 20 years more experience than I had. And I was a kid. But I knew that I could sing it. Either way, it lit a fire under me. I got so angry, and I thought, they only see me as a dancer here. I'm out of here. I went to the store and I grabbed what was called, what did they call it? Backstage.
Right.
In the United States, they had a newspaper called Backstage, and it held auditions. It had information on auditions in Chicago, in New York, across the country. And I looked in, and to my surprise, there was an audition going on the next weekend for Jesus Christ Superstar in New York. There was a touring company that was going to go out, and I bought myself a plane ticket, and I headed to New York, and I went and auditioned there. And guess what? They hired me as a dancer.
No.
Can you believe it?
I'm surprised because I'm looking at your CV here, because I've got moving on to 1995,
Yes.
you would then go on to play the role for 3 years.
Yes, but that's...
So you were right at the end.
Yeah, it is the right role for me. And I should be playing it. However, I must have just been too young.
Yeah.
I must have been too young. But
And maybe a height thing, you know.
I'm a little guy. I'm a little guy.
Well, we're the same heights. We're not
between
bad at
5'8"
all.
and 5'9". But basses, there are no things written for basses, which is why I cling so desperately to the few roles that are there. I hate to say anything bad about him because he is one of my favorite singers on the planet, and he is a dear friend, Norm Lewis.
Yeah.
Norm Lewis. But I was so excited to hear that he was doing this most recent television production. And I was saying to friends who were in the room, you're going to love this guy. He is so amazing. And he started to sing, and I heard, "Gentlemen." And I went, fuck, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And it, gentlemen is where it starts. It should resound, and your skin should just raise. The hairs should raise when you hear that voice. And it pissed me off.
Yeah.
And it pissed me off that the industry is still hiring people who are names. This brings us back to
The point
celebrity.
we said at the beginning.
Find the guy with the voice and let him do it.
So I've got here that you did, in 92, US national tour of the Rocky Horror Show. First time you got in the heels of Frank, I believe.
Yeah, this was a strange experience. It wasn't a U.S. tour. It was a Northeast tour. What I mean by that is it covered 3 states, 3 very small states in the North, Connecticut and New Hampshire. We were around that area. And the director was playing the role of Frank. And he hired me to be his understudy because he knew there were, a week of performances that he couldn't make. And so I sat there biding my time and waiting and learning the role. And he played the role as every scene he did as a different Hollywood star. So one scene he did as Bette Davis, one scene he did as Joan Crawford. It went from one to the other, and they were all his. This was his, bag of tricks. He could do all of these characters. They had nothing to do with the show.
No,
and they certainly didn't play a masculinity, which I believe Frankenfurter must have.
Sure.
Must have. So it was the first time I was sinking my teeth into the role. And he was very angry with me because I wouldn't play these, as I was learning the role, I wouldn't play this scene as Bette Davis.
You wouldn't do it as him.
And I would say, but I have to seduce Brad. And why would Brad get into bed with a guy who's pretending to be Bette Davis, which was obviously insulting his choices and his motivation for doing what he was doing. But it was my first chance to play the role at all, and as I wanted to. I did it for a week, and it lit a fire in me, and I thought one day I'm going to go back to this role, and I'm going to do it right.
And didn't you just? And for years.
And for years.
But in a wonderful way. I had Liam Tamney on the show, for example.
Oh, I love him so much.
And he said exactly the same thing about you. And he said how much he'd looked up at you, for example. But I said to Liam on the show, I said, talking about the later production of Rocky Horror, I don't know who was looking after the marketing and the PR at that point, but with you and with Liam, that show was everywhere. I've lost count how many times it came back into London, went back on the road, went whenever it was seen. And there was something about the branding of that show that was so strong. The only thing I heard on the grapevine, which might be wrong.
Yes.
I remember there was, the Royal Court did a celebration of the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yes.
Right. And I believe they asked various Frankenfurters back. Now, other than Tim Curry and Anthony Stewart Head, the only other name that I find synonymous with that role is you. But I heard that you weren't asked to do the Royal Court. Is that true?
It wasn't a question of not being asked.
Oh, I see.
I was asked. I was on the road at the time with the show.
Yeah.
And Chris Luscombe and ATG, they were very concerned that the show's company morale had a certain level. And we all know this, those of us who have toured and been on the road for a year with one company, it can be brutal.
Yeah.
And when there's a hierarchy and people start to feel less appreciated or more appreciated than others, when the balance is off, the tour goes sour. And Chris Luscombe was very, very worried that if I was pulled from the show to do a star turn at the Royal Court, it said to the rest of the company, he's actually the star of the show. You guys are ensemble. He's the star of the show. And I will argue with this. And in fact, it was a bone of contention between Chris and I for a long time.
Yeah.
I said, do you realize this can make and break me? This puts me, if you bring me in to do a number, it puts me on the same level as Michael Ball, as Anthony Head, as Tim Curry. I'm put up there with some of the greats. And when I'm not included, it leaves me looking like a touring Frankenfurter.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult for me, but I accepted his wisdom about it. He was looking after his company. ATG always wanted the show to be the star and not a star.
I think the decision is bollocks. I can say that because I'm not you. I think it's an absolutely ridiculous. The years that you put into that show, the people who discovered that, I mean, it sounds mad, but people discovering the Rocky Horror Show for the first time on stage, you are their Frankenfurter. I've heard your I'm Going Home, and I think you absolutely deserved a place on that stage with Tony Head, and actually some people who might be more famous for doing it didn't necessarily fulfill the role quite as beautifully as you did vocally, didn't bring a campy performance to it, which of course, you know, the show's gone through lots of development. Yeah. I think it's the wrong decision. I was upset about it. I was like, why isn't Bedella on that stage? I mean, though, you know, how many heels has that man gone through? I think he's earned a place on the Royal Court stage.
That's nice of you to say. Thank you.
This is Liam Tamney, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates. I see you shiver with anticipation.
4 years. 4 years. You would get less for murder. 4 years playing David on Broadway in Smokey Joe's Cafe.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the original Smokey Joe's Cafe?
The original Smokey Joe's Cafe on Broadway.
Wow.
Yeah. I was hired out of Nashville to do it. I had just finished,
Right.
I'm the king of long tours. I had just finished 3 years of Jesus Christ Superstar, which, you know, this brings us full circle. I eventually got the role of Caiaphas in the 20th anniversary production. And so I was out there doing it with, I mean, it was a dream come true. The Jesus was Ted Neely from the film. The Judas was Carl Anderson from the film.
Yeah.
The Pontius Pilate was the lead singer from the band Styx, Dennis DeYoung.
Okay.
He was absolutely brilliant. The Mary Magdalene was Irene Cara from Fame.
No!
And Flashdance.
That's the coolest thing in the world.
And I was the fifth principal. I was Caiaphas. So the whole tour was a dream come true. I stayed with it for 3 years. We hit every city there was in the United States. It was brilliant. And at the end of it, I had been approached 3 times by 3 separate producers from Nashville saying, you, with that bass voice, you could kill a country music career. And when you finish this tour, you got to move to Nashville.
No.
So I moved to Nashville. My partner and I at the time, I was dating Presley Sutherland. We were doing the tour together. We moved to Nashville. I started collaborating with writers. I was pursuing a country music career.
Do you like country music, David?
It was my passion. It
You're
was my
joking
favorite.
me.
It was my favorite music for 3 years. You can ask anyone on tour
What, like
with Superstar.
Boot, Scoot and Boogie, that kind of...
Well, no, not the silly stuff, but the beautiful ballads. I mean,
You've just offended
write.
all of our line dancers.
The songs, the writing of the songs can be absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Lots of pop tunes are country songs that are rejigged for that genre.
They say about Dolly Parton, don't they? You know, she wrote "I Will Always Love You," which is probably the biggest, pop ballad there's ever been. Never made.
And it started as a country tune. This holds true.
I had no idea.
Yeah, so I moved to Nashville, and I took a stab at it. And a couple of weeks in, I got a call from my manager in New York who said, "Smokey Joe's Cafe is looking for a very specific thing. They want a bass who can cover Fred," because Fred was this enormous bass. He had this great voice. They need someone who can cover him, but who is also a dancer and can cover Kennard and sing baritone, high baritone, F's and G's. you're one of the few people that they know of who can do both things. I had the low voice and I had the high voice, and I could dance. And so they flew me to New York. I did all my stuff for them, and they said, you got the job. And I ended up doing my first Broadway show, Smokey Joe's Cafe. It turned out to be a great win for us because Presley was just going into seminary. Mm-hmm. And he was going to have to work a day job and do classes at night. And it was going to be a 5-year period that he was going through school. When they hired me out of Nashville, they offered not just my salary, but a per diem because I was hired from out of town. So in addition to $2,000 a week salary, I was making another $2,000 a week per diem. This was bringing in 2 full salaries, myself alone. And so I was able to say to press, come back to New York, go to Union Theological Seminary. I can pay for everything because I'm making 2 salaries at once. Let's do this. And that's how we began.
And I wonder how many people thought it was the other way around. Do you know what I mean? Well, you being a performer, I'm one of those who are not in the business who thought, I bet Presley pays for everything, supporting that silly performing arts career. Yeah. I should say, because I know, well, I knew Presley certainly when I knew you. So Presley was a pastor for the Metropolitan Community Church.
MCC.
Was that what he was doing then? Was MCC the route, or was it just theology that he was?
Theology in general. He knew that he wanted to be a pastor, and when he joined the company of Jesus Christ Superstar, one of the first things he told me over cocktails was, "I'm here to create a nest egg so that I can put myself through seminary and become a pastor."
Yeah.
He wanted to just study theology quite generally, and he realized that there was a calling for him to do gay and lesbian LGBT theology.
Yeah.
And so he went into that and eventually found his way to MCC.
God has been a huge, huge influence in your life. I mean, your adoration, and I've literally seen you become a different man in a church. That awareness of a God, when did that come? You were saying you were the kid that was mucking around in the auditorium and desperate, perhaps doing things that you shouldn't be doing. When did David Bedella, the man who appreciates a relationship with God, come into your life?
It absolutely came hand in hand with my relationship with Presley. We talk about the 10 years of theater in Chicago. I was working as a chorus boy, and when you're in that community, it's very biting.
Yeah.
It's very jaded. You learn how to be a smartass and cut other people to the core before they cut you. It's dog eat dog. It's not in any way concerned about who we are as human beings.
Yeah.
It's simply a bitchy community. I know these are sweeping generalizations.
Well,
but
I was going to say, is that a Broadway thing, or is that a young, attractive gay man thing?
I think it was just the community that I was involved with in Chicago. And I don't mean to slam them. They're lovely people, and it was a wonderful time. But I learned to be that person and not who I was. And much of it was out of humor. When you're jaded and you're sarcastic and you're bitter and you say something in the dressing room and everybody laughs, you go, this is who I am.
And that's not just an American thing. That's worked exactly the same thing in every other theatre across the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And I suppose as well, you've got a time of things like, Paris is Burning is out there.
You get strokes for being funny and being jaded. And that's who I spent a big part of my life becoming. When I met Presley, it was my first experience of being with someone who treated everybody the same. He had respect for everyone. He treated everyone with kindness and love. And I wanted that. I saw him, and it drew me, as God does, as anybody on a faith walk will say. You're meant to be in the world and represent that kind of love. And people discover it because they want what that is. I want to be around that person because I feel good in their presence, and I'm drawn to be a better me every time I'm around them. That's how I felt with Press. And so I started my journey back to God because I had shunned my Catholic upbringing from the time I was 20. I thought, well, I'm gay, and they don't like gay people, so I need to get out of here. But this was when I was around 30 years old. I started making my way back. And I discovered that the more I studied theology, the more I realized its core level was love others, make sure that everybody is taken care of, forget about yourself, take care of other people, and God will take care of you. It's cyclical.
So do you think that's when I say to you, this energy that I see in you, this warmth, this love, the fact that everybody does light up when they, if I say to somebody ice cream, they respond in the same way as when I say David Bedella. Do you think that really comes from your relationship with God? Do you think that's what we see? I
absolutely do. And I know a lot of people will cringe at that. Even now I have friends who say to me, "You're not really religious, are you? I mean, you don't still believe all that bunk." But I tell you, I'm a different person because of that journey. Yeah. And every time I'm in a difficult situation, my mind says, how can you handle this with love? Mm. How can you lovingly express what you need, what you feel, your position, and get to the other side? And it's changed who I am. It has. And I feel happier for it.
This is casting director Annie Rowe, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates. I hope you've learned your sides.
What was it that brought you over to the UK? And indeed, the first sort of major UK credit that I think brought you to the attention of UK audiences in Jerry Springer the Opera.
Right. Well, I came over because of Presley.
Yeah.
Presley was working at Metropolitan Community Church in New York. I was doing the Broadway show. He got an offer he was working there as an assistant pastor. He got an offer to become a senior pastor in London. And he made a trip over and he came back to New York and he said, "Dave, I know you are going to love London. You're going to love it." And so he knew that I had fulfilled my dream. I had become a Broadway actor. And he said, "I would like to fulfill mine. What do you think about us moving to another country?"
Wow.
And I thought, you know what? Life is an adventure. It just is.
There wasn't a part of the David Bedella actor's ego, which is, but I've made all these bloody contacts in America.
No. In fact, it was a bit the opposite. Once you do Broadway, you realize this is just like every other show, except the stakes are higher, so the people are shittier. Yeah. And I know that sounds terribly jaded to say, but when I was doing Smokey Joe's, I was reminded on a daily basis, I have a list in my drawer, stage manager, I have a list in my drawer of 300 people waiting to fill your job. Yeah. So please me or I get rid of you. It was a very hard lesson. And I thought, I've done it. I did what I set out to do. Let's go on to the next adventure. So we sold everything we had. We moved to London and I worked as a hairdresser in Islington.
You never worked as a hairdresser.
To God.
Where did you learn how to be a hairdresser?
I used to do it for friends. I discovered somewhere along the way.
Where did you learn to do it?
I never did.
Are you any good?
Oh, I'm really good.
Are you?
I'm not going to lie. I can cut a head of hair.
Listeners, if you would like a cheap haircut, please email the show.
And Who said cheap? Who said cheap?
Did you play a head? No, hang on, no. Years ago,
yes,
you were in, what was that bloody show that you cropped up on? Was it called The Salon?
My God, I can't believe you're remembering that. Yes. I know. Yeah.
But you just...
That was a horrible experience. We're not even going to talk about that tonight.
We just sat there going, she's fucking up my side parting.
No, I could always cut hair. I cut hair for friends, just for fun. And eventually shows...
For your fun?
Yeah. Eventually shows in Chicago and in New York started hiring me to do hair. In shows that I was in the ensemble, they'd say, "You're actually cutting half the guy's hair in this show. Do you want to just continue and we'll put you on salary?" Yeah, so it was a supplement to my weekly income. So I was doing that for a long time. When we came to London, I decided, okay, I've done Broadway. I don't want to do anything lesser. So I'm going to just become a hairdresser. And I cut hair in a shop called Compton Hair. It was the first place I went into when I got here.
It was.
And I cut the gay community. Why not? And I cut there for a few months. And then I decided, no, I really want some proper training. So a friend of mine hooked me up with a place that was in Islington. And this woman ran it. And she said, nobody cuts hair in my salon unless they have done 4 years of junior apprenticeship. And so we started out with me folding towels and making coffees and mixing colors and answering the phone. And about 6 months of that, I said to myself, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm just wondering how long that was
seriously,
gonna
I
be.
thought 40 years old, Broadway career, and I'm folding towels in Islington. For a long time, genuinely happy to be out of show business. I really was, because the stress and the strain of what's my next show it's debilitating sometimes. And when you've done it for 30 years, it's a relief to say, okay, I don't have to do that anymore. I've got a steady job. I know what I'm going to get at the end of the week. This is my new life.
And my husband is doing what he loves. And
He's
we've got a
doing what he
lovely
loves. Yeah.
home, and we're part of a community.
Life was
and
really
church.
good until that little demon showed
Satan.
up that said, hang on, I've got things that I can do.
And literally said, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fucking
What the
fuck.
fucking fuck, right.
So how involved were you? So we both have a mutual friend, Richard Thomas.
Yes.
Who I'm going to say on record, I would say Jerry Springer the Opera is in my top 10 favorite shows ever written.
Yeah.
Ever. I think it's a satirical masterpiece. I think my fear of ever doing that show is finding that cast again.
Yeah.
And even down to, and no disrespect to people in the ensemble, but, you had like Ed Barua, for example, doing the odd line in the background. You had Phil Sutton. You had some of the most wonderful, real people singing at a level that I defy anybody to be able to get the same sound or of what you guys did. So how involved were you in the creation of Jerry Springer the Opera? Because I know you created bits and pieces that are in the DVD, the famous DVD. Oh, younger listeners, a DVD is a disc that you used to put into a thing. It's on Netflix, I'm sure, somewhere.
It was a very collaborative effort, and that's what I loved about it from the beginning. Richard Thomas, they had done a production at the Battersea Arts Centre.
Yeah.
And I went in for the auditions for a production that was going to happen at the Edinburgh Festival. And when my agent at the time asked me if I wanted to audition, I said, absolutely not. I've only been away from the United States for a year. I'm really happy to never see Jerry Springer again. It was a very bad thing on television.
But you hadn't read it or anything at that point?
No. I just knew it was about Jerry Springer, and I didn't like the idea. 2 more phone calls later, and he said, you really must go in and meet these guys. I think it's going to be a really big event in London. So I went in, and they gave me 2 pieces of music. And I started to sing through, and I thought, wow.
Which ones?
The opening number.
Okay.
There was a lot of melisma. What was that? Oh, they must have given me the Fuck You, Jesus duet.
Fuck You, which is...
And I had not any expectation that there would be that level of classical music. They also gave me the aria.
Yeah.
And
Once in Happy Realms.
Once in Happy Realms. And I sang it through, and I saw him say, I saw the look on his face when he heard what my timbre of voice was. And he said, by any chance, can you go down another step? And I did. Can you go down another step? And I did. Can you go down one more step? And I did. We ended up dropping it down a 4th. And he said, fucking hell. I had no idea we could sing it down here. He was worried.
So that was you.
Yeah. So we brought that down there. And then in the first number that he does in Act 2, he has to do all this falsetto stuff. Way up there. And he said, by any chance, do you have falsetto? I know it's a big ask. So I sang all of that stuff in falsetto, and he took that up a step and that up a step. And he said, okay, I think we know what we're doing here. So this song that was this big in range ended up expanding quite a bit further. And I was very pleased. I thought, this is a good match.
As a man that believes in God.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've had this question countless times. But when you had the huge amounts of protests that were going on, against the show, you probably had people who you were close to still saying this is blasphemous. How did you justify in your head listening to those opinions to go, no, this isn't offensive and this isn't blasphemous?
Well, there were 2 sides to this whole argument. The first is one has to realize that art and theater are there for a very specific purpose. They're to hold up a mirror to society and say, here's what's going on. What do you think?
It's almost like a bit of the libretto that comes to mind.
Why?
Because that's what you say.
I do?
Yeah, in Jerry Springer. Jerry holds up, what is it?
Of course.
Jerry holds up a mirror and shows how shit life is or whatever.
Yeah. This is art. This is art. And so we're not saying, I completely forgot it. But we weren't out there to say this is what's true. We were out there to say, look, everybody, here's what's going on. What do you think?
Yeah.
And so I think that was a very important element.
Did you talk to protesters when you were doing the show?
I went out night after night. There was a whole group of people that were standing out there. I mean, 40 people with picket signs. And I'd go out night after night and say, listen, I can get you into the balcony. There are seats. There are seats in the upper balcony. Come see it. If you still feel strongly that this is blasphemous, then we'll have a conversation. But if you're not going to even educate yourself about the thing that you're protesting, we have no conversation.
And did they come in?
Never, not once.
That's because ironically, looking at your CV, you've been involved in productions with two of the most controversial shows ever made when it comes to religion.
Which are
Jesus Christ Superstar. Yeah. Of course, and Jerry Springer the Opera.
Yeah.
And your relationship with God doesn't seem to be particularly tainted or damaged or...
Stronger, if anything. Stronger, yeah.
Did you have any other bizarre encounters when you were doing Jerry Springer the Opera?
Probably the most interesting was the second time I did Jerry. We did it at Carnegie Hall in New York.
Right.
And I did it with Harvey Keitel playing Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
And that in itself was I mean, I've got stories I cannot tell on the air.
Maybe one.
He was very instrumental in my doing the show.
Right.
Very instrumental. He came in and, how do they say? He came into the audition while I was auditioning and sort of peed all over it.
Yeah.
He listened while I sang, and then he stood up and he said, "Can I say a word to the room?" And they said, okay. And they had looks on their faces like they wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
And he walked up to me and he took me by the shoulders and he said, "David, I believe that is the best that song has ever been performed." And then he turned to the people who I was auditioning for and said, "In fact, I'll go this far. I'll go as far as to say no one will ever do a better job than that, ever, performing this material. I think I've made myself clear."
Oh my God.
And he turned and left the room, basically telling them, you have no choice. I'm Harvey Keitel. You either do this or we don't have a deal. And
did you thank him after?
Oh, the loyalty from our friendship. We had done a film together the year before, and so we knew each other quite well. And he was the reason that I went to New York at all to do it.
So wait. You had to re-audition.
Oh, God, this is a bad story.
No, but hang on. You had to re-audition for that role.
Yeah. James Moore. Do you know who James Moore is?
No,
He created Avenue Q on Broadway.
Right.
He was directing the Carnegie Hall production of Jerry Springer. He didn't want me to play the role because he was very, very close friends with Sean Hayes from Will and Grace.
Yeah.
They were very close friends. And Stephen Aramis was telling me after the fact, he said it was pretty much a done deal that Sean Hayes was going to play the role. And they, in an obligatory sense, had to talk to me and see whether or not I was interested in it. Harvey said, "I'm doing this so that David and I can do this thing together. Part of the reason I want to do this show is because we worked together while Dave was doing it at night. We were doing a film together. I want this collaboration." And so they did it because they had to. They auditioned me because they had to, but they knew they didn't. I say they, James knew that he didn't want me doing this. I had said no when they said, will you come to New York and audition? I said, hang on a minute. I created the role. I won an Olivier for it. It's recorded for the BBC.
Yeah.
So all you need to do is pop the DVD into and you can see what I do with the role. Take a look. I'm happy for you to say, yeah, we want to go a new direction or, whatever. But
I think I've done my time in this role.
Will I spend my own dime to fly to New York to audition for a role that I created?
And you had to still do that?
Yeah.
That's fucking ridiculous.
Well, Harvey called me one night. He called me on a Friday night and he said, "Dave, what the fuck's going on?"
Yeah.
He says, "They're telling me that you're dragging your feet about coming to New York. And you know that I'm doing this. I want you to do it." And I said, "Harvey," and I told him everything I just said. And he said, Dave, how long have we been friends? And I said, we've been friends 4 years now. And he says, listen, I'm going to talk to you like somebody who's been your friend for 4 years. I said, okay. We can swear on here, right?
Yeah.
And he says...
I love that you've just been talking about Jerry Springer and you're worried about swearing, but anyway.
He says, okay, so I'm going to talk to you like someone who's been your friend for 4 years. Who the fuck do you think you are? Fuck you. Fuck you. Do you know who I am? I am Harvey fucking Keitel, and I fucking audition for every fucking film I do. Do you... And it went on. It was a tirade that went on for several minutes, at the end of which he said, Dave...
Are you still there?
Are you still there? And I said, I'm here, Harvey. And he said, so are you on a plane this weekend? Yeah. And I said, yeah, I am. And I went in, and long story short...
I still think you were right, though.
To stand off?
Yeah, I do. Because at the end of the day, Harvey Keitel is Harvey Keitel. But, maybe because I know David Bedella, who is David Bedella. But it's not like there's a limited amount of resources to understand how well you might fulfill that role.
Well...
You know what I mean?
Listen, he had a different agenda, and you have to respect that he had a different idea of what he wanted.
If it were a film, if it was like a comedy film,
yeah,
it would cut from him going, "Who the fuck are you?" and then cut to an image of you just putting the Olivier on a piano. fuck you, I have to audition, and then pressing play on a cinema screen and just watching the performance of you as the devil. I mean, it is still lunacy.
The most interesting thing to happen through this whole experience, we performed at Carnegie Hall, and we had he and I were on two different floors, our dressing rooms, and I had a big party in my room. All of my friends and all of my relatives, and I had wine and cheese, and everybody was having a good time. And the phone rings, and he says, "David, it's Harvey. I'm upstairs." Why do I make him sound like Harvey Fierstein? He's Harvey Keitel, but he's got quite a strong Italian Jewish New York thing going. And he says, "I need you to get up here right now." And I said, Harvey, everybody I've ever known is here for my opening night at Carnegie Hall. I can't come up right now. And he says, don't argue with me. You're going to appreciate this. Get upstairs now. So I make my apologies to my party. I go upstairs. He's waiting outside his dressing room with 2 glasses of champagne. He hands me one and he says, are you ready? And I said, what are you doing? And he says, are you ready? And I said, I'm ready. He opens the door and he says, David Bedella, James Gandolfini.
Oh, Jesus.
I say, hello, how are you? David Bedella, Robert De Niro. David Bedella, Joe Pesci. I said, hello. I mean, and it went on. It went on. The entire Hollywood mafia was there to support their friend, Harvey Keitel. And they were all waiting to meet the guy who played the devil.
Of course they were.
At the end of it, he says, and across the room is a lady she's rather shy. She said, when you have a moment, please come say hello to her.
Go on.
I walked down the room and I said hello. And she's got this cowboy hat on, so I can only see her from the lips down. And I said, hello, I'm supposed to say hello to you. I'm Dave. And she says, oh, I thought you were so great in the show tonight. You were so great. And I said, oh, my God.
Is it Liza?
Are you Holly Hunter? I know it sounded like Liza. Are you Holly Hunter? And she said, I am Holly Hunter.
No way.
You were just so great in the show.
Yeah.
She's got that Southern accent.
Yeah.
And we had hugs and kisses. And I thought, well, this is one of the most extraordinary dressing room situations I've ever been in. It was really lovely.
That does sound extraordinary. But nothing quite as extraordinary as dramatic news! Today's top stories. West End musical Everybody's Talking About Jamie will be turned into a film by Sheffield-based production company Warp Films, the same company who released the screen adaptation of Jeremy Dyson and Andy Nyman's stage play Ghost Stories, and it will also be developed in conjunction with Film 4. Furthermore, the film will be holding an open casting search over the next 7 weeks. Applicants need only be over 16, with no previous experience required, and should upload a 1-minute video of themselves to jamiefilmcasting.com. Everybody's Talking About Jamie is written by Dan Gillespie-Sells and Tom McRae, and directed by Jonathan Butterell, all of which will work on the adaptation, which is expected to commence filming in spring 2019. A new booking period has been announced for the London production of Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamilton. The show, which is currently running at the Victoria Palace Theatre, has extended until the 30th of March 2019. Tickets for the new booking period will go on sale on the 4th of June 2018 at 12 noon. Tickets can also be bought in their £10 daily lottery. Buddy. The Buddy Holly musical will embark on a new UK tour next year to celebrate its 30th anniversary. The rock and roll piece follows the tragically short life of the Texan musical icon, who died suddenly when he was 22. It first opened at the Theatre Royal Plymouth in 1989, before transferring to the West End, where it ran for over 14 years and has been seen by 22 million people across the world. The new tour will honour the anniversary by starting at Theatre Royal Plymouth on the 3rd of September 2019 with a special gala performance the night before, with tickets being offered at the original 1989 prices. Casting and tour dates for the production are to be announced. And finally, a special news story for fans of gin and comedy. See Steve First in character at the Underbelly Festival on the 15th of June, and if you book from tomorrow, you will get a free Gordon's Gin on arrival. Just visit underbellyfestival.com and look up Steve First in character on the 15th of June.
I'm Alistair Brammer, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates, a man with the hairdo of a children's TV presenter and the drinks cabinet of an elderly Broadway diva.
I know you've done long-running musicals where you've had to do many, many performances, but if you want a gauntlet, there is none so more than Arnold in Torch Song Trilogy. I mean, talk about an emotional gauntlet. You know, I love you, but not enough. You know, from the moment you start with that speech, you go, fuck, this is the most wonderful piece of writing. I watched it at, 12 years old? Yeah. Not enough. And I remember that speech and I just went, oh, I've never seen someone tell a story about people like me like this before. Yeah. You know, all the way up to crying all the way at the father's grave. You know, I mean, it's just the most extraordinary story. Was that some form of validation for you? Because you and I both know musical theatre is seen as some kind of lesser art form by many people, and then you get Torch Song Trilogy. I know you've done films and you've done TV and straight roles and all these other things, but probably one of the defining gay plays of the past 100 years. What was that like as an actor to say, right, no more singing, you are this part? How did you face that responsibility in that role?
It felt to me like a validation of all of my early years. I grew up in a family where it was not okay to be gay, in a time when it was not okay to be gay. You know, very close to, only a few years after this whole thing happened for Harvey Keitel. I had a family that did not accept it. And I remember the same conversations happening that he has with his mother. The screaming matches that happen with your parents where they say, how dare you compare your life to mine? How dare you compare your relationship to what we have? And me saying, how dare you not see that it is the exact same thing? Yeah. And so this was real for me. The opportunity to express it on stage and with such eloquence that Harvey Keitel lays, pen to paper, was an absolute gift. But I have to say it was also cathartic, in a almost a dangerous way. It brought up a lot of memories from my early years and things that I hadn't thought about and didn't want to face again.
Yeah.
I remember once or twice getting, after the big fight with Ma in Act 3, getting off into the wings. And although I had held it together and I had fought hard and we screamed and we yelled and blackout, and I got into the wings and I sobbed. And I remember my dresser saying, you only have like another minute and then you got to get out there. And I couldn't pull myself together. I was sobbing because all that shit from my early years got raked up.
Do you not think that might have been why Harvey wrote it in the first place? Because he was going through the same shit?
Very, very possible. Yeah, and very probable. I'm 56 this year, and it's why it was so important to me when it was offered, because I thought, this is my generation. This, I watched this happening in New York and on film, And it was my chance to put my stamp on it, and I loved it. I loved it so much. It speaks to the gay community in a way that very few other gay plays do. Do you know it's a strange thing? My son, I have a son, and he's 18 years old.
You said this to me on the phone years ago, and I went, what? When did you get a son?
He's 18 years old, and when I talk about these things, he says, Dad, you do know that that's your thing. That's your issue. My friends don't even think gay, straight. They just don't.
Wonderful.
It's not a part of their thinking these days, and that's hard for me. I'm glad, because it's what we worked for. It's why I did parade after parade after parade to say we're just like you and accept us. But part of me is sad that fight is over to a certain degree. It will never be over, obviously, but they don't understand the struggle. They just think, what are you talking about? What are you on about? Why is this an issue?
The amount of drag queens that have said to me, darling, I'd do a show and I wouldn't know if the door was going to be beaten down and police were going to arrest us all. Yeah. But God, it was fun. Yeah. And I understand. I understand in the same way that, kissing a boy when it was naughty was perhaps more exciting than when you can do it when you're in Argos.
Yeah.
Hello, this is Steve First, and you are listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates. A man so marvellous, he's putting bums on seats. Whether it be parakeets eating halal meats or premier athletes submitting VAT receipts. It's the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates.
We've spoken about some big old shows. I know you've done Chess in Concert, for example, which I was a student at the Guildford School of Acting, for example, when you were doing that. You've done major Carnegie Hall, but also you always come back to the work. You always come back to what I think is the most frightening, which is what? You want me to play Sweeney Todd in front of 100, 200 people? Okay. How many people was it?
60.
60?
Yeah. In fact, I think the place only held between 50 and 60 people. It was really small. It was a room above a pub.
Yeah.
And half of the room was taken up with the stage. So there were very few people around, but we were so close that you did spit on people's faces when you sang.
Well, I hope you asked them, to pay more.
They got quite bloody as well. It was very, very intimate.
Did you love it?
Oh, it was one of the best experiences ever.
So really. This is Sweeney Todd, which you did at the Twickenham Theatre with Derek Anderson directing.
Yeah, it was great.
Who was your Mrs. Lovett?
Sarah Ingram.
The
great Sarah Ingram.
The very great.
She said to me the other day, darling, I would love to direct you in something. I said, dear, you did. My Mrs. Lovett.
How are you going to do it like that?
Make no mistake, you did.
But also, I without being funny, you're not an obvious, David Bedella for Sweeney.
He is a classically English character. It's like, who's the girl? Renee Zellweger. She played Bridget Jones. It's
Are you comparing Sweeney Todd to Bridget Jones?
I'm comparing an
You are
English...
such a homosexual sometimes.
I'm comparing an American actor going after a classically English character and saying, I can do this, in the country in which it was created.
Did you do it with a British accent then?
I
don't think you need to.
Have. I'm sure I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
I just don't know if you need to, because in the same, I say it all the time on here, but, Gemma Chan can play Queen Victoria. The moment I know that she's Queen Victoria, but sort of don't care what she looks like, what she sounds like. Just has she got the qualities of that character for me to go, oh, cool, I get you're a queen. Sorry, not that came out.
How dare you, sir?
Talking about another small production, which we did cover quite in-depthly with Paul Taylor Mills from a producer's side on the last episode. Your second Olivier Award for, let's be honest, the hottest show in town, In the Heights. Yeah. You, Eve Polycarpou, some of my very, very favourite performers ever, all, do you know what I mean, doing a great show that was dynamic, that was vibrant, that was relatable, that was by a little-known writer, Lin-Manuel Miranda, whatever happened to him. Mm-hmm. Your involvement in that, how did that happen? And what was the process like developing that show?
For me, it was all about family. All about family. And the excitement and the energy that came from the dancers and the youth of the production. I left all of that to everyone else's hands. I knew that my purpose in the production was to be the foundation, to be the strength, to be the solidity on which everything else was built. This is about relationship, a father, a mother, and they're doing everything they can to create a better life for their child. They're immigrants, and it's the classic American dream.
Yeah,
and so that was my main focus. And the dear part about all of it was that for so many years I've been the guy with the jazz hands doing the big, loud, brash American showman. But in short, the same with Chess in Concert. When I went into the audition and I met with Tim Rice and Hugh, the director, he said, "You've got to play the arbiter. You've got to be the showman, and you're arranging the entire evening. You're setting it up for us, and you're." I didn't want to do that.
No,
I
you were
wanted to be the
authoritarian.
actor.
Yeah.
I wanted to be Malakhov, the actor. And Tim Rice was the one who stepped in and said, "This is my choice, and I want him as Malakhov."
Yeah.
It was the same thing with this production. I got to let go of all of that showman stuff and just concentrate on family dynamics and heart.
Yeah.
And the lovely thing about it was to be recognized and to get accolades for it, to receive an award for the one show that I do that is introspective and quiet and humble and thoughtful. So the opposite end of the spectrum from where my other work usually sits, was enormously satisfying for me. It made the second Olivier that much more important.
And wonderful to see an Olivier for something that perhaps some people would have turned their nose up at. Oh, you want me to do what? This new musical
Southwark
about
Playhouse.
whatever at the Southwark Play? What
For how much?
Yeah,
yeah,
and to see you, obviously receive the best supporting actor role. It just goes to show that as artists, it's what we invest our time and efforts into that can actually be recognised, rather than is it minimum equity? Is it this, that, and the other? Will I get a driver? Probably none of those things, but you might be a damn sight more satisfied doing something.
Good Lord. I mean, I was living on, a wing and a prayer. There were days I was collecting coins out of my drawers to go get bread, because that's how much we were sacrificing financially to do this thing. But everybody's heart was in it, and that's what made it such a success.
This is Bill Deemer, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates.
It's time for the Show People podcast platform, the part of the show where we like to share new work with you lovely listeners. And today it's given to Emma Jane Morton and Edwin Ray. Now, they're two best friends who are also performers. Edwin is currently in Matthew Bourne's Cinderella, and Emma Jane is on tour with Crazy for You. They recently set up a small production company and produced a small-scale show last year, and they're hoping to continue this work further down the line. As part of this, they have taken on the task of writing their first ever musical. Well, good luck, guys. It's no easy feat. The new musical is called Prophecy, a new Tudor musical. They are continually working on it, and so far they've had a read-through as well as a week of music and dance development, which had really positive responses. What they're really looking for is you lovely listeners to give them a follow and spread the word of their updates, details at the end of the song I'm about to play. And they're also hoping to do larger scale workshops in the future, and they need financial as well as audience support to help them along the way. So go on, everybody. Everyone talks about the need for new musical theatre. If they're putting it on, please make sure you go and see it. So, about the show, Prophecy, a new Tudor musical. Well, it's Tudor England, and the country is divided as King Henry continues to seek divorce from the much-loved Queen Catherine for Anne Boleyn. Away from the city, the young nun, Elizabeth Barton, suddenly finds herself becoming something of a celebrity. When word gets out, she receives messages from God and has had visions that have come true. Elizabeth must confront the king with a prophecy that could change England forever. A tale of self-discovery, sacrifice, and secrets. Prophecy will leave you questioning what is truth, fact, or belief. The song we're about to hear is a love duet between Elizabeth and her greatest friend, William, whom she leaves behind to fulfill her destiny. The two dream about what could have been if only they had been in another time and another place. Performed live in a recording studio by the writers Emma Jane Morton and Edwin Ray, with Emma Jane also at the piano, here's Beside You from Prophecy, a new Tudor musical.
If only you could read the thoughts that I am hiding, rush between my head and heart deciding, do I let you discover the love from another beside you? If only you could share the things that I imagine, a loving future with you and our family in, never far away, here I would stay beside you. How can I bury this longing to live out my years with you? Husband and wife, a happy home life, a love that's forever true. In my protection I cherish your gentle and sweet allure of beauty and kind, which in your face I'd find each day a little more.
If only I had longer gazed into your eyes, would you have seen my blushing heart filled with butterflies? Now it all becomes clear, looking at you near beside me. If only I had listened harder to each word, maybe your spoken signs I would have heard. Everything makes sense, your shy pretense beside me. I never imagined this feeling of craving so much for your love, to be held in your arm, caught by your charm, like the hand matched by the glove. Am I selfish for even dreaming of your face with its beautiful view, when I know in my heart God's ready to start the things that He needs me to do?
Is this warmth I am sensing, this rise that is soaring so high, a heat taking hold of the fear and the cold, a love that I cannot deny? If I were a little braver, I'd give myself all complete. But if I let you go, would you ever know how much you made my heart beat? Just in this moment, I'll stand here beside you.
Thank you so much to Emma Jane Morton and Edwin Ray for sending in their new work. Well, if you would like to be beside them, you can follow them on Twitter at Edwin J. Ray and at Emma_Jane Morton. You can follow their new production company at Elevation Limited, that's LTD_UK, and www.elevationproductions-uk.com. And you can also follow their show, www.prophecythemusical.co.uk, and at prophecy_stage on Twitter. Do give them a follow, please support them, and let's encourage as much new musical theatre in the UK as possible.
Hi, this is John Barr, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keates.
So, David, tell me about the future, because you've had something which has nothing to do with Jerry Springer the Opera and show business. You've had a rather lovely personal development, which you've been beaming about.
Yes, love has fallen into my life yet again.
Good.
We've talked about Presley. We've talked about my early years and how tied in the religion, the church, all of that was. It was a very difficult time over the last 6 years when he and I decided to separate our lives.
But very amicably. You were so...
Oh, very much.
Like, I mean, you were two best friends. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely best friends. Yeah, which we continue to be. There's a great amount of love. I know a lot of my followers are concerned, what happened with Presley and all of that. That's it's very, very good. We have a very close relationship. We will always be family. There's no way you can be with somebody for nearly 20 years and not continue to be family. So that's kind of wonderful. After 6 years of being alone, I have fallen in love.
Oh, I'm so happy.
And it's a really, but yeah, I've fallen in love with a man who is a graphic designer for a newspaper, so he has nothing to do with showbiz, which is gorgeous.
Wonderful.
Gorgeous. And he's a good man.
Yeah.
And he's very sincere and very sweet and likes to take care of me. And his name is Steve, and I'm very happy.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear it.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, just the love and the positivity that you have in your life, the fact that you maintain a wonderful friendship with Presley, who is always nothing but kind and wonderful to me, and also this new relationship, which I really, really wish you all the best with.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to do another Sound of Music reference. It's time for my favourite things. David Bedella, I'm going to strand you in Whitley Bay. You will get a copy of the Bible,
right,
and the complete works of William Shakespeare. That is a given. But I want to know what you need to survive. The categories are Best Album, Film, Book, Play, Musical, and Luxury Item.
What?
Let's start with what your favourite album would be, or what would be the album that you would need to survive a torturous tour in Whitley Bay?
Right. Okay. Gosh, this is challenging. Terribly Gay, Donna Summer's Greatest Hits. Who could live without that?
No, well, you couldn't, I know as a
Right.
fact. And the film?
The film, Moonstruck. Gotta see Cher and Nick Cage.
Jesus.
Gotta see it once every week.
And book?
Book. Now, this is going way back, but John Irving, he did World According to Garp, lots and lots of sort of 70s novels, but they were the books I cut my teeth on. And A Prayer for Owen Meany remains one of my favorite books of all time. Absolutely loved it. Now, if not that, it has to be The Hobbit. The Hobbit.
Just because you relate.
Yeah, because I have hairy feet. The Hobbit was the first book that I ever read when I was, that I really poured my heart and soul into when I was 14 years old. It was my first experience of escapism, of a book that could take you to a whole different world. I had not experienced that before, and The Hobbit was it. So that's really probably my first true love.
And what would be the play?
The play? Lettuce and Lovage.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're going to go with a Carol Churchill.
Yeah, come on. It doesn't get better than that.
I can't believe that.
I laughed from start to finish.
Hysterical.
I cried. It was one of the best.
I love that most of your writers and influences are all British.
What do you think?
Yeah. Okay, what would be the musical?
The musical. This one's harder. Because there's such a range. Okay. I'm going to go with Sunday in the Park with George.
The greatest musical ever written.
Do you think so?
It's my favourite musical.
Come on.
Yeah.
You're not just saying that.
No, it really is. Yeah, it's my favourite musical ever written. I've put it out there anywhere, whether it's a room above a pub or a community hall in Southampton. I don't care. It is the finest musical. And and actually the finest production. I saw Dan Evans and Jenna Russell doing it.
Stunning. Absolutely stunning. And it comes full circle. It takes you through every emotion there is. But when you get to that final song and he reads in the book and then you hear the Sunday come in the background, I weep.
So
I absolutely weep.
James Mannerhalf will tell you this. He has been given one instruction for my funeral, and that is it. One instruction.
Yes.
In the event of me going under a bus, all I require is a choir singing Sunday in the Park with George, the finale version at my funeral. That's all I want. That's
if
all I need.
If he can do that and get me your cat,
sure,
because I want the cat.
When
you're gone, I want the cat.
On record, if anything happens to me, Toby Page can be adopted by David Bedella.
Hey.
But yeah, in fact, no, George would be a good role for you actually. George Surratt. Yes, come on. Okay, final one. What would be your luxury item? And don't say something filthy.
My luxury item.
Yeah.
Gosh. a big freezer. Oh, this will bring me back to my Mexican origins.
Yeah.
A big freezer that has a lifetime supply of chorizo. Because a true Mexican cannot live without chorizo and tortillas.
This is West End producer, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with the sumptuous, the savoury, and the slightly sugary Andrew Keates. Dear.
Well, it is time for everyone's favourite part of the show, Funny 5 Minutes.
Oh.
David Bedella, you must answer all of the questions I'm about to ask you as quickly as possible within 5 minutes. You are only allowed 3 passes, so please remember to use them wisely because you have no idea what I am about to ask you.
I really don't.
David Bedella, let's play Funny 5 Minutes. David Bedella, who would play you in a movie of your life?
Peter Gallagher.
Very good choice. Who is the most famous person you've ever kissed?
Harvey Keitel.
If one song would sum you up, what would it be?
I'm still here.
David Bedella, what is the strangest thing you've ever had in your mouth?
Oh, God, you're terrible. Pass.
Oh, my God, we got a pass. Okay, do you believe in aliens?
No.
Have you ever been arrested?
Yes.
What happened?
I marched for Matthew Shepard's memorial, and I got arrested and spent a night in jail.
There was me really hoping it was sort of, some indecent exposure or something.
No.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Oh, Star Trek. Only recently, though.
That is the right answer.
Discovery.
If someone narrated your life other than yourself, who would it be?
My boyfriend.
Aww. Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Very, very good answer. What is the worst note you've ever been given by a director?
That's it.
What is your worst habit?
What is my worst habit? Doubting myself.
If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
Erections. Complete and undoubted erections.
What's the stupidest thing you've ever done?
This podcast.
What's the best kids show on television?
Best kids show? Thomas the Train?
Thomas the Train?
Yeah.
So what's the tank engine, Bedella?
Oh, fuck me.
How do you like your eggs in the morning?
Ooh, fried eggs.
Fried eggs. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
100, please.
100? Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's a bigger battle. It's glorious. It's big. It's epic.
It's almost Lord of the Ducks rather than Lord of the Rings. What is the best Disney film?
Cinderella.
And what would your autobiography be called?
Can you believe it?
Who is your teenage crush?
Tony DeFranco. Now, you'll have to Google him.
Yeah,
you'll have
everyone.
to look that up. Tony DeFranco.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the days of black and white movies. What is the filthiest joke you know?
Oh, I don't know any dirty jokes.
You do know some
I
dirty
really
jokes.
don't.
You definitely. Is that a pass?
It's a pass.
Pass. How many pairs of shoes do you own?
5.
5?
Yeah.
You call yourself a homosexual and you own 5 pairs of shoes.
I've slimmed down.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to donate to the David Bedella Shoe Appeal, you can email info@harryknifeandproductions.com.
Only shiny shoes, please. Only shiny shoes.
Only shiny shoes. Is line dancing cool?
Absolutely.
Who is the ugliest person you've ever kissed?
Oh, the lights weren't on. I know no names.
Really?
I don't know. I know.
Is this your third and final pass?
No, I don't.
It's a pass.
Pass.
What are the best kind of pants?
Pedal pushers.
No, as in you're in Britain now, David. As in pants.
Pants.
A tight boxer brief, a brief, a baggy boxer.
A boxer brief.
A boxer brief.
Yeah.
As
that's
in,
what
as in
I wear.
a little bit of support.
Little support.
Support under the balls there. If you had to jump into a swimming pool filled with something, what would it be?
Men. Steve, forgive me.
Steve, forgive me. Well, Sadly, that noise tells me that is the end of the show. But before we go, I just want to squeeze in a few parish notices. Firstly, thank you to Emma Jane Morton and Edwin Ray for sending in a song from Prophecy, a new Tudor musical. But most importantly, please go mad for the wonderful Mr. David Bedella! Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Do I get to say something?
You certainly do.
I've known this man since he was 17 years old, and he's a good guy, and I love him. Thank you so much, Andy.
I love you more. If I could have an adopted father, another one, it would be you. Hey, David, how can people keep up to date with all that you're up to?
It's kind of difficult. I'm not a social media guy, but I do have a Facebook page, and I do have a Twitter. Yeah.
What's the Twitter account so people can follow you?
At David Bedella.
All of David's Twitter and Facebook details will be in the show notes. Don't forget, you can also follow me on Twitter at Andrew Keates, follow the show at ShowPeopleUK, and use hashtag ShowPeoplePodcast. You can also send me an email to info@arian-productions.com, or you can like the Show People Facebook page at facebook.com/ShowPeoplePodcast, where you can join the listeners forum and talk with other listeners to the show and discuss the issues that have been raised, including celebrity casting and Cuba Gooding Jr. Now here's a question for you. Have you got a nice cup of tea or coffee that's sat next to you at the moment? Wouldn't it look infinitely better if it was a Show People Podcast mug? It definitely would be. Well, you can get your very own Show People Podcast mug at www.arian-productions.com/shop. You can get your jazz hands around one, and all profits go towards supporting this free podcast, as well as future projects by Arian Productions Limited. Or if you don't want a mug, well, just make a donation at arian-productions.com/donate. Don't forget about Steve First in character. I will be there, so please join me for a gin, as I'd love to see some listeners and some familiar faces. And finally, don't forget to check out our sponsors, Theatre Counts, and beware that dreaded July tax deadline. This podcast is produced by Arian Productions Limited, dedicated to giving opportunities to theatre makers. Please get in touch at info@arian-productions.com if you'd like to get in touch with me. And until next time, show people, just be better.
I have to pee.
You have to pee. We can take a break.
Yay.
Let me pause there.
Gonna keep that in?